Welcome back. Winning Plays Podcast, Rich Levine, Brian Robb. Paul Pierce, B-Rob, not sorry for posting a video with strippers on his Instagram. Not sorry for not passing the ball to Yuri Welsh earlier in his NBA career, in his Boston Celtics career. Have you been keeping up? You're going to Springfield this weekend. Pierce getting inducted into the Hall of Fame this weekend. Kevin Garnett will be presenting him. You'll be in attendance for this magical moment?
I will not be in attendance. I'll be in attendance. They do press conferences on Friday, and that's gonna be at Mohegan Sun, and then the actual induction will be on Saturday. So I will be in attendance Friday for the press conferences. We'll be watching remotely things on Saturday night, but they have to save. I mean, we'll get into this later, but they have to save KG introducing Pierce for last, right? Like that has to be a requirement of the evening. I would hope.
Well, who else is in this class?
It's like Bill Russell as a coach. I think Bosch, Chris Webber. Pierce is definitely the biggest name amongst like former NBA players.
So, Are you staying at Mohegan Friday night?
I am not planning on staying. I believe my wife Kate would have a word with me to stay at Mohegan Sun.
I think
and our 5-month-old for.
I think babies are allowed at Mohegan.
I'm sure they were allowed. I probably saw way too many of them out in Las Vegas during summer league. But given the road situation, we'll probably save that trip for at least 2.
Hey, so we're going to talk a little bit more about this Pierce thing towards the end of the podcast. But to start off really quick, if I gave you, let's say you had $500 burning a hole in your pocket that you felt comfortable, that your wife said, okay, you can use this to gamble a little bit. If I gave you 8-1 odds on Jason Tatum making the Hall of Fame, would you take that bet?
8-1?
8-1.
Yeah.
So you get $4,000 on your $500. That seems fair to you?
That seems fair. I would feel pretty good about that. I might even take even lower odds.
My gut said 5, but I thought it was being a little bit crazy.
Yeah, 5 is when you have to start thinking about like, okay, it's still pretty early here, but I mean, based on trajectory, you have to feel 8-1. I'd feel very good about that return.
What if I gave you 15-1 on Jaylen Brown?
That I wouldn't feel as good about. I'd still maybe be willing to take a flyer on it if it was a little bit higher, but it's
somewhat connected because they have to win at least one title, right?
Right, exactly. If they start a dynasty here, then yeah, all bets are off. Like he can get on that track very quickly, and the skill set, or at least the stats as opposed to last year, if he can do 10 seasons of that, then yeah, then we're talking. But that's it all depends again, like you said. You need that with the winning to kind of get there, I feel like.
Okay, 2 more. If I give you 2-1 odds on Rajon Rondo as a basketball Hall of Famer, 2-1 odds, do you take that? I'm basically asking, is Rondo a Hall of Famer?
Is Rondo a Hall of Famer? I'm gonna go no.
Really?
Which is too bad. Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at it. I guess maybe this is just going on gut. He just bounced around way too much in the second half of his career. And I know he won with the Lakers last year, and that he's had some nice redemption, but there was a real post ACL tear. There was a real rough period there where he wasn't even close to, the first, second, or third best player on a bunch of those teams. And even when they won, he wasn't ever any of those.
So 4-time All-Star, 3-time assist champ, 2-time NBA champ, 4-time All-Defensive, only 1 All-NBA appearance, which is as many as Tatum already has. So that's tough. A steal champ. So according to Basketball Reference, they have his Hall of Fame odds, or on their Hall of Fame monitor, it's at 60 here. It's 60.6%.
That feels generous.
Right, but if you look who he's around, it's mostly guys who are in the Hall of Fame. So Giannis is 67%. Obviously, Giannis has many more years left. Mitch Richmond is another one of those guys maybe he's Hall of Fame. He obviously made it. Richmond was 69%. Rondo is at 60%. I think I'm taking 2-1 odds on him. So Klay Thompson is still only at 51. He's got some work to do as well. Dennis Johnson was only 50%. I think certainly if he wins one more title with the Lakers, I think you get that third ring. I think he is in. Either way, I think he's probably in.
Yeah, I think that's a fascinating bet though, because I haven't really thought about him. Early in his career, like 2012 or whatever, that was like, oh yeah, no brainer. But then the fact that he's been around for that long and still is a contributor on all these teams still bodes well for him in terms of longevity and stuff like that. So it's a fascinating argument. That'll be really interesting to see how they handle that.
Okay, last one. If I gave you 50 to 1 odds on Juancho Hernangomez heading to
uh,
are you gonna be at Mohegan Sun for Juancho's
yeah, for
induction in
Juancho,
15 years?
I'm taking that because what Dino Raja just got. He got in what last year, 2 years ago. So like,
Obviously
he's
also was a pioneer. I mean,
right. No,
Juancho wasn't
I'm
really
kidding. I'm kidding. Juancho has a very very long way to go to approach
Dino walks
Dino.
so Juancho can run,
Exactly.
essentially.
But the international first now. So yeah, so this is a good segue. Ryan and I talked with Ryan and Suichi on Friday about the deal, but we haven't gotten your take yet. And I also have to give you credit, first of all, as a regular listener and actually frequent co-host the show. Brennan Jackson pointed out that when I asked you about who you preferred as the 15th man on the roster last week, Carson Edwards or Chris Dunn, you nailed this and said neither, Rich, and paving the way for those two guards being moved out for what I think is a nice stretch forward that probably makes sense as some depth on this roster.
I think you said it, and I can't take too much credit for my opinion because I didn't even remember saying that. But I will.
Don't tell many people that. It's just love
If
it.
the tape exists, I'm going to believe it exists and say that I nailed it. But yeah, it's exciting. I mean, I wasn't particularly. I mean, I guess some people were somewhat excited for Chris Dunn. Like we don't know if he's even going to be healthy enough to play. But I think that the potential positives of Chris Dunn against the potential negatives of Carson Edwards, I think at the very least equaled each other out. So I think that's a wash right there. We feel okay. And yeah, Juan Hernan Gomez, I think that's a fun addition. Like, and obviously, like you can find, as we know every year in the draft, like you can put together a YouTube mix to make any potential NBA prospect look like a future All Star, right? But when you look around at like some of Juancho's highlights, like some of the better games that he had, and right, a lot of those games were for Minnesota the last year and a half, which is a team where the games really meant very little. But like there was there's like a 25-point night he had against Denver, right? If you search like his best highlights as a Minnesota Timberwolf, uh, he's doing it against the ones,
Hmm.
right? Like he's hitting shots and like when he hits a three-pointer, like it looks good. Like the shot looks like it's supposed to go in. It's not like I'm trying to whether like a Daniel Tice, right? Where like he shoots it and like sometimes it goes in. You're like, oh, okay, but like you don't really have much confidence. Like he's got like a decent looking jump shot.
No, I mean, based on like to your point, I think he's like a gunner from that position anyway. Not like a real one, but like he's looking to shoot, and he knows he can shoot. Now, the averages beyond his rookie year when he shot like 40% have not been pretty, and from three, they've been very up and down. And so the fact that he's willing to take those shots isn't necessarily a good thing.
But like
But
two seasons. Well, he played a season and a half in Minnesota, 66 games. He shot 30.354, so 35%
right,
from three.
that's average.
Not great, but you'll take that, yeah.
Oh yeah, and so that's I think to your point too is like I think he's gonna having a more willing shooter in those spots as opposed to and this is not knocking Grant Williams. We know Grant Williams is like he's only gonna take those shots if he's got 2-3 feet open in front of him and teams are dragging in, so he's that's taking away options in the other parts of the floor in terms of sagging in the lane and taking away lanes from Jalen or Jason. Hernan Gomez, like you probably can't leave alone and feel good about it. Like, at least he posed the threat of like, okay, this guy can get hot and can get going. And not to say he's gonna have to play his way into like a rotation spot, but just having an option of that guy at this position at the end of the bench, I think makes sense for this roster and help kind of rounds it out a little bit more.
Yeah, and given who they gave up, like if he does nothing, it's
Right.
not a big loss, right? Like
No, because those are Chris
it's
Dunn
basically
and
house money.
yeah, it's that's funny because Chris Dunn and Carson Edwards, they weren't gonna play, barring injury. Like Chris Dunn, yeah, like maybe he could have played his way into things with a good training camp, but like who are you playing him over? Like Pritchard,
Right.
Romeo? Like no, guys that you don't want to be on the bench. So that probably made us need to okay, so let's actually address a part of the roster where, we don't know what we have. We have Grant here, we have Jabari, Parker, and now we have Hernan Gomez. And I think it's going to be, one of those guys will probably play each night, and it would depend on the matchup, or it might just depend on who separates themselves during training camp.
Yeah, and let's say that Hernan Gomez also is the star of an up and coming Adam Sandler movie. Have you
Yes,
seen that?
I did see. I haven't gotten the details on this. This is a Netflix movie that Sandler's
Yeah, I
making.
think he's got that big deal with Netflix. Yeah, so he plays like a struggling NBA scout who is and Hernan Gomez is his Steve Nebraska.
Is
You remember Brendan Fraser and wow, why
sure.
am I forgetting what's his name? Al his name was
Pacino.
Al in the movie. It's really it's a like
I never saw that
legendary.
movie.
You never saw that Scout
I never
with
saw The
Brendan
Scout.
Fraser?
No, that was like early
Well,
'90s, like mid '90s.
1994. Yeah.
All right, yeah,
Oh, that's one of
I was
the
a little too young for that.
Albert Brooks. I'm sorry, I forgot his name.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good one to check out. I'm sure we're all our YouTube listeners who were born in 2010. I'm sure big Scout fans. But yeah, that'll be pretty cool. Maybe Adam Sandler will hang out around the garden a little bit. It doesn't say when it will be released, which is a little bit weird. I can't find when that movie's coming out, but apparently it is done, and he plays like. And so I don't know. Maybe a better comparison is like George Muresan in My Giant.
Sure. Eddie.
Eddie, yes.
That was right in my the wheelhouse in the mid '90s. Yeah, so I must have just missed a Scout. I wasn't. I out of the '90s sports movies didn't make the cut for me for some reason.
We're gonna do a winning plays, not book club, but like a movie club, and that's our first submission. Next week we'll do an episode just breaking down the Scout with Albert
Done.
Brooks and Brendan Fraser. But
uh,
yeah, so I mean, I think there's a chance, like, and yeah, like, and for some reason, my mind always goes to Javante Green, just in terms of like recent guys who could fill this role. But I think we could see Hernan Gomez like stretches of time during the regular season. That's when you need him. Like when come playoff time, like, are you expecting him to be a big part of the rotation or part of the rotation at all? Like, no, I don't think so. But like over the course of the year, if one of the Jays goes down for a week, or any number of guys go down for a period of time, and you need Juan Hernan Gomez to step in and play 15 to 20 minutes a night for a couple of weeks, I think he could do that. And maybe he could, and again, maybe if he gets that opportunity and seizes it, maybe he does carve out a role in the playoffs. Maybe he could be like a Jarebko kind of player, not to get you too excited. But
no,
for
I
me,
mean,
that's sort of the ideal for me. That's maybe the ceiling for me for this team. But again, when you think about what they gave up, that's exciting. That's not a bad addition.
and you have him under contract for next year. That's non-guaranteed. So it's a situation where if he plays well, earns a role, you can keep him at the right price. If not, then like you said, no harm done, and you move along. Or hey, that's another $8 in a trade without taking away. Maybe that saves you from having to include one of your guys on a rookie contracts in the deal. So that could end up being useful too.
Yeah, and again, he's a guy that could. He's not the centerpiece of a deal, but if you're throwing him in as like the third, fourth, or fifth guy
Oh,
or
yeah, just for
whatever, I mean,
salary matching.
yeah, but he's young enough and has shown enough flashes and is athletic enough and can shoot just well enough for a guy his size that maybe another team, again, if people want to take that one more chance on him, like the Celtics are doing right now. But hopefully it doesn't happen. Hopefully he's a major part of raising another banner in Boston, and maybe he'll win an NBA title and a Oscar in the same year. That would be pretty cool.
I have a question for you though, or kind of a sad question.
Oh no, I'm not ready. Okay.
I mean, not too sad, but has Carson Edwards played his last NBA game?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he's going to play too many more. I don't think.
Yeah. What's the over under?
It might be semantics a little bit. Yeah, I think so. He's in Memphis. Yeah.
They have 18 contracts right now, so don't feel good about him making the team there.
Yeah. Carson's played his last NBA game.
Yeah.
He'll play again in the G League for a little bit. But again, I still think that he could have a really good, lucrative career overseas.
Oh yeah, he'll make millions overseas
Mhm.
as a an energy scoring guy for any team over there. So,
which is
but
which is great. And I hope he does. And he played how many what was his the if we're closing the book potentially on his NBA career, how many games do you think he played?
uh, I want to say he played 50 at least. He played a good
Six,
amount each season.
68.
68, yeah. So it's like this isn't a guy who didn't get opportunities. So you don't like he didn't get like consistent ones, but they Brad Brad Stevens has like been tough with younger guys and rookies, but he gave Edwards a chance both years, and he showed a little bit more in splashes last season. Like he had that really one really good game when they won against the Clippers in LA, where they had like no one, and that was probably his best like pro game. But again, he just couldn't really sustain it ever, and the size limitations just became a little too much for him to overcome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking right now. I mean, he last year he played 31 games. He was 18 for 63 from three. He
Yeah,
shot 28% from three. And like you said, when you're undersized and you come in when you're billed as a shooter, when you have what was it, 9 3-pointers and a half, or was it that just one game?
yeah, it's like a quarter, like 8 and a quarter. I think he had against the Cavs in that preseason game.
Yeah, and like that. I mean, not that you're going to expect that, but that's the kind of guy that he needed to be, or is close to that, to carve out a role in the NBA, given all his other limitations. And he wasn't even passable. The year before, he 37 games was 24 of 76 for 31%.
Right.
Um, that's just not okay. With that, if you're paid to shoot threes and you do not hit them, you're not going to last very long. So 2 seasons, we'll see what happens. I'm not rooting for him to have played his last game. I would love for him to get another chance. I would love for him to just find a groove and just stay in the zone for a season and maybe help out a decent team. But I don't necessarily see it happening. But hey, two more years in the NBA than most people play.
Right. I mean, and props to him and his agent. He got 3 guaranteed years and out of second round pick. So he maximized that first summer league performance as much as he could. So that's whatever, $6 million in the bank, and then a bunch more probably coming, um, likely somewhere in Europe.
Sure. All right. So what else do you think? Do you think we didn't talk Pierce? I kind of like his scorched earth mentality right now. Because what I like the thing I didn't like about Pierce on TV, and the thing he probably didn't like about himself on TV, just judging from. Did you read the Chris Mannix story?
Oh yeah, great story. I mean,
Um,
with him going, I mean, we can get into it a little bit, but he pretty much we can go in 100 different directions from that story. So Paul Pierce, I appreciate the fact that I mean, he's always this during his career, as you very well know from covering him you know in person for so long during his prime, that he's just candid and very interesting, and isn't afraid to, and always loves to like take shots at LeBron, and he kind of hit the trifecta in this SI piece with Chris Mannix, like on the ESPN stuff, but then he gets into the reunion stuff with KG and Ray and Rondo, whether that'll ever happen. And I'm also intrigued as well with the talk of the KG Pierce reality show slash podcast, where they potentially go do things like the running of the bulls or other skydiving or whatever. I feel like that could have some real potential behind it. But I wonder if like how motivated are those guys to do it? Like that is it going to be
I
worth
think,
it financially for them to do that stuff?
yeah, I think it depends on the money. I think they're both probably pretty financially motivated
I
at
would
this
say so.
point. So yeah, I mean, if you're talking about jumping out of planes and running with bulls, I think you want some money. I would love to see KG square off face to face with a bull. Like I don't know necessarily that would be an interesting if this show does come to fruition, that would be an interesting bet. Who will win? Just mano a mano. Like most of the people run in the opposite direction, but I wonder if KG would just run towards the bulls and see what happens. It could be like running of the KGs. The bulls would start running in the opposite direction.
All right, but yeah, so Pierce going to the Hall of Fame again. Anything else from that? I think he took some nice shots at Jerry Welsh and just that whole era. But what sticks out to you? I mean, what it's for there's few guys like who's going to have a Pierce career any more of one team. It seems like in the NBA period. But what did anything from that article stick out to you more than anything else? The fact that did come close to you know getting dealt before the KG trade was live. Like, how do you think his career is viewed any differently if he does make that move? If like he gets that trade to Portland 2006 or whatever, if any of that stuff does happen before they put the pieces in place around him, or did he maximize everything he could here and that just made his career in Boston for those first 10-15 years? Like, could he have been more somewhere else, do you feel like?
Uh, I think for him it was just about getting that title. I think he
Right.
needed that to really, because again, he wasn't. We know that he wasn't LeBron. He wasn't quote Kobe. He wasn't. And we're splitting hairs here. He's most certainly a Hall of Famer, right?
Yeah.
But he always seemed to be just one maybe little notch below the top. But being able to get that ring, not only that, but getting the Finals MVP, so being the MVP of that title, being surrounded by two other Hall of Famers, potentially three, if we're talking about Rondo earlier in the show. But no, I think I, I think if Pierce is traded to Portland before the ring, and I don't think he was going to go and win a title with the Trailblazers. I don't. I mean, I is he definitely a Hall of Famer at
Right.
that
Like, did,
point?
did he need? Do you think he needed the ring to be a Hall of If he like didn't win, if they for whatever reason didn't win in 2008, he would still be a Hall of Famer. I feel like. I mean, it makes it just that much easier for him to get it. Maybe he has to wait a little bit to get in, but like I still think his body of work was more than enough to get him in.
Wait, if he had been traded after just like so, I'm looking right now. So he was a 5-time All Star with the Celtics, from '02 to '06, right? And
Yes.
then '07 was the bottom of the barrel, right? He played 45 games for that horrible team, and
Right.
then the next season he had five in a row from the All Star game, missed that horrible year, then five in a row again,
Yeah.
right after that. So 10-time All Star. But everything that comes after that break, we just don't know if he goes to if he goes to Portland, if because there was a time in Paul's career where I think he would say as much as anyone, like he wasn't. I don't know if motivated is the right word, but he was kind of just in a rut. I think he was maybe partying a little too much, maybe drinking a little bit too much at times. I don't think his body and his mind were in a place where he was necessarily on that Hall of Fame track. Because I mean, how many All Star games did Antoine Walker make? I mean,
Like
probably
three, maybe.
three, and Pierce. Pierce
Well,
had
and he
had
and he and he clashed with Doc too, right? Early in Doc's tenure, if I remember
yeah.
correctly, right?
So I think there's a reality where he goes to Portland, and that Portland team was not great, right? I mean, they were drafting Greg Oden, so they that like
Right.
shortly after that, so they weren't in a really great place. And if he goes there and just kind of like in the West was was still pretty tough. I mean, with the Spurs and the Lakers and whoever else was there, I think there's a reality where he goes to Portland and kind of is a solid player. Like Sean Kemp's not a Hall of Famer. A
Sure.
guy who had that first burst with a year, but then once he was traded, and again he was another guy that lost the thread of staying in peak condition a little bit, and he's not a Hall of Famer. So I think that he needed the title. I think that those years, that second act with with KG and Ray, uh, was everything, because we saw, I mean, once he left, I mean, he was 36 years old by the time he ended up in Brooklyn. But like, that stretch, he averaged 13 and a half points. That was his high in his
Yeah.
years after leaving the Celtics. And clearly it would have been a little bit better had he left when he was younger. But no, I'm not convinced that he would have been a Hall of Famer if he had been traded and before '08.
All right. That's. I mean, you make a pretty good case there. I do think the pre '08 years, and like you said, he had his struggles during the year with motivations or stuff off the floor. Obviously, and we know obviously the his tragic incident getting coming back from stabbing, which is just an incredible story in itself. Um, very early in his career, but the seasons he put up with like like the crappy supporting cast around him, I think those seasons are kind of undervalued in the big picture by at least a lot of today's fans, since he was like, we all know Antoine was a very limited and kind of overrated player, like in hindsight. um but Pierce defensively and like his ability to get to the line and and kind of do pretty much anything for those teams while like carrying, while having guys like Yuri Welsh or Walter McCarty. No knock at Walter, but like there was just no other. There's no established even third scorer on a lot of those teams that could like. They traded away Joe Johnson. That was probably their best chance of having a guy like that. And then that's when Danny kind of came in and had to, you know, decide like at least realize this and decide, okay, we better blow this up now before it's too late, and then we lose him totally.
Yeah, no, we talk about that year, '06, said before they bottomed out, and then immediately were on top after that. But like that team, so Pierce is 28 years old. The Celtics finished 33-49. Um, and through all that, he plays 79 games, 39 minutes a game, goes to the line 10.3 times a game. And that's just not. I mean, that's hard work. I mean, we'll
Oh
see if
yeah,
Tatum can do that. I mean, and it's one thing when you're doing that and winning, but like when you're getting your ass kicked physically, personally, individually, by getting to the line, but then you and your team's getting their ass kicked every night too. I mean, that's hard. But he had 26.8 points a game, 6.7 rebounds, 4.7 assists. Getting to the line, like we said, 10.3 a night. And again, the 3-point shot was just different back then. He only shot 35%, but was only taking 4 a game. But that's commendable, and you can understand why he would be at his wits end mentally and physically after a season like that. And again, we're at the same time, as he says, if he's out there playing his ass off, busting his ass, and at the same time is getting yelled at for not passing to Yuri Welsh, right? You can see how that would wear on you, and you might feel like, okay, maybe it's time for me to go somewhere else. But let's just, we're all thankful that is not the case. That despite the fact that he played for 3 different teams after the Celtics, I mean, it's just an afterthought. And we say that every time, but like I have the one memory, the Washington Wizards and hitting that
yeah.
bank shot in the playoffs to win that one game. I have very little. I don't know if I have any Nets memories.
Just like they had, and that series against the Heat where they got their doors blown off pretty much after, game 3. Yeah, it is nuts to think how he was in Brooklyn for, was it 2 years or 1 year? Was it just the 1 year?
1 year, which is
That's
wild that they
it's
that they did
so
that and then
so wild. Like in hindsight, like it's just. I mean, you look back at that trade again, but like, holy crap!
and
Just
then what did KG play? 2 years,
AJ, I think played 2 years, and they traded him for Thad Young. So he probably played two
right?
years, and they trade him maybe in the middle because they had to make him. He got that option picked up as part of the trade. So yeah,
So that's wild. So when they made that deal with Pierce, the Nets did. He was going to be a free agent that next year.
yeah, that must have been
I
it.
guess so.
And then
Because
because
it
they were
said he's.
paying because the tax money, as then they realized, okay, we can't pay like $200 million in taxes, so I guess we're gonna let you walk, Paul.
Well, they say like we
Um,
could, but maybe just not for a 37-year-old
yeah,
player
right.
who
We're not gonna, yeah,
has been done
or
for 2 years at least.
right, and who was also like on a team that is not gonna be good enough to get out of the conference finals anyway, even if he was there.
Right.
Um,
Okay. Yeah. So KG played the 1 year, and then at the deadline the next season, so he
Next year,
played a year
that's
and a half.
a year and a half.
Was traded
You
back to
forget.
Minnesota.
Like we joke about this deal, but I always assume that those guys played there for 2 years at least. Like
You would
okay,
have thought so, right?
right, but just an absolute disaster. And you forget like like Jason Kidd in charge of all that. Just like, oh my god.
Straight up for Thad Young. Yeah, that's wild. But that's cool. I'm glad you're gonna have to. So you imagine that KG will be there at Mohegan. Pierce would be there. I wonder if like you get one of like Rondo and Perk. Why
Right,
wouldn't
like
they
who's
come
yeah.
by and hang out?
I will be curious to see who is. I mean, yeah, like who makes the trek to Springfield or to Mohegan. I mean, I assume none of those guys they're not coming for the press conferences. Um, where the players are introduced and obviously take questions from the media. But then are they gonna head out to Springfield on a Saturday night and then just and take it all in? I assume Perk and Ryan will be there. Well, I don't know. Like, I wonder if like it's
That'd be
Doc
nice.
and Danny. I imagine all those guys will probably be. If not, they'll certainly be watching. Obviously,
Yeah, no, it'll be fun. I'm jealous. So wait. So you're just going to Mohegan. You're not
just going
going to
to Mohegan.
Springfield.
I'm not going to Springfield
All
because
right.
the seating situation is not, from a coverage standpoint, it makes more sense to watch that on TV since you're not going to be able to get much from the in person.
Cool. All right. Well, enjoy yourself. You gonna find time to maybe stumble over to the tables at all?
Yeah, I'm gonna probably beg Pierce or KG for like a $500 chip or something like that at some point at their high roller
Well,
table.
yeah, we'll see. Yeah, that would be a story. Sit down with the two of those guys and play some blackjack. Tell them it's the first episode of their new reality show.
Yeah,
I'm sure Mohegan will love if people are filming
uh,
in the on
that'll
the
be
in the casino.
must see TV. But yeah,
Cool.
we'll report that next week. In the meantime, hit us up at Winning Plays Pod on Twitter. Hit Rich up at Rich_Levine. I'm at Brian T. Robb. Rich, we got training camp later this month here. Like off season came and
I'm
went.
I know I'm feeling the off season right now a little bit. Like this is the
Yeah.
first time I feel like over the summer that's the off season, but like we had plenty to talk about. And now for the next month or so, I'm like, all right,
Well,
what are we doing here?
Brad Stevens isn't done. We didn't even talk about the Juwan Morgan signing. So
Oh,
that's
that's true. We buried the lead.
buried the lead on that one.
So what's that? That's just a warm body at training camp to
Competition for Jabari Parker for that 15th spot. He's averaged 1 point a game, so I imagine he's a defense first player via
hey,
scouting reports. So, but stay tuned for that one.
that's good. Just make the Jays work a little bit, just someone
There
to
you
maybe
go.
push them a little during training camp. Who knows?
We'll keep an eye on it. But in the meantime, thanks for listening, and we will check you guys next week.